This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. Today is Wednesday, the 16th of July, and as you can see, we are on set at Lansdowne Park. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. I am joined by Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Good morning.
Great to see you both here on a hot day. Holy cow, by the Great Lawn.
By the Great Lawn. Yeah. And I should say that we are here on location, being filmed by Rogers TV, so a big thanks to Rogers for being here with us.
Woohoo.
And maybe you can tell us why we're here at Lansdowne.
Well, I think I'm going to give that over to John as the park pod, trademark John Willing, his idea. What are we doing here, John?
Well, we wanted to take the pod on the road, right? And then so when the city started to allow us, everyone, to drink in parks, we thought, why not come to Lansdowne Park? Because this is one of the most important topics, this site, at City Hall coming up certainly this year. So we thought, why not combine the best of both worlds, Lansdowne Park, our favorite beverages, and I think we're in legal time territory now to actually pop a drink.
Yes, so drinking in parks starts at 11 a.m. And the time is?
11:05.
11:05.
Because here we follow the rules.
Yeah, we waited.
So what is everyone drinking?
Oh, okay, hold on here.
I am drinking a Darling Mimosa, made in Canada with Ontario wine and orange juice, which I'm pretty sure is not from Ontario, so I don't want to know where that comes from. And also, I just chose this as well because I thought it was more respectable kind of drink to drink at 11 o'clock in the morning in public. So,
well, how about you, John?
I've got a Kitchissippi beer. It's a Heller Lager. It's, I was looking at my fleet of beers in my fridge. I'm like, what can I drink at 11 o'clock? So I went something below 5%, 4.8. So local, I live in Kitchissippi Ward.
It's the best ward.
And so why not support local for sure?
Yeah. Excellent.
And I am drinking a Grolsch Radler. So beer and lemonade. In my case, I have to say it is a non-alcoholic beer, but
that is classic because I have not heard of a more enthusiastic proponent of our new policy on drinking in parks, and this was partly your idea. And now I see that you're having a non-alcoholic beer. I mean, I support that kind of consumption, but I find that kind of amusing, I have to say, Neil.
Yes. Well, I have to be honest, Joanne, that I spent many, many years drinking in public parks. So.
Illegally, and now that it's legal, you're like, never mind.
Too late. Okay, listen.
Are we opening our drinks?
Let's open our drinks.
All right.
Yeah. Hold on, I got it.
I dropped mine earlier, so I hope it does not explode here live on television. So,
cheers.
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 All right. Oh, it did explode on television. See?
Wow.
Live TV here, people. I'm here to entertain and apparently humiliate myself.
That's
here we
okay.
go. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
Okay, now I'm going to drink this.
Okay, well,
I'm going to spend the rest of this sticky time talking about Lansdowne.
Well, let's jump into it. So Lansdowne, it is coming to a final vote at council in October. We have heard, I want to start with cost. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of it. This is Lansdowne 2.0. Now of course, it's important to say that we did what we'll call Lansdowne 1.0. We did that about 10 years ago.
We didn't call it then at the time.
No, we didn't. We just called it Lansdowne.
That's right.
But we went through a major renovation a decade ago, and now we're told that we need a do-over. And we are told by the city that the cost will be $419 million. So we're also told by the Auditor General that the cost will be $493 million.
So basically $500 million.
$500 million. So, Joanne, maybe you can take us through the cost. Like, who should we believe in terms of these two estimates? Could it even be more than that?
Of course it could be more than that. These are Class C or D estimates. That basically means there's like a 20% leeway on whether it's, that it could be less or more. But we know from projects, not just in Ottawa, but from around the world, it's never less. It's never 20% less. So, of course, it could be more. I think the Auditor General found things like the costs that were included in the city estimate. This is Natalie Goujon, the Ottawa Auditor General, said that there should have been more costs included, that some of the assumptions that the city side made were a little bit too rosy, for example. Although she felt they were reasonable, the assumptions on the city side, but for example, that she felt that they were not using a high enough contingency fee. She argued that they were not following their own policy. So she's like, look, when you look at all this stuff, it could be, at least $79 million, $75 million more. We also know that, construction inflation is high, and when you get down to it and you start doing the work, there's always extra costs. So we're in for more than $500 million, I would think, for this project. And we should just say for the city side of the project, which is to rebuild the north side stands, which are over there, and what I still call the Civic Center, a TD Place, which is the arena.
Yeah.
So those are city assets, and they're like, that's what they should pay. Now, I'm sure we're going to get into it. The city doesn't think we're just going to like write a big check. They have schemes to get that money back. So
yeah, they've got. Okay, so maybe let's talk about that. And John, so the city says, sure, there's a big price tag, but we'll be getting in lots of revenues. And the city will say that it comes down to it'll amount to $5 million per for the taxpayers per year. So can you tell us about some of the revenue side, like what revenues we're hoping to get?
Well, should we talk about waterfalls? I mean, it's one of the words.
Not the waterfall. I wish we were building a waterfall at Lansdowne instead of financing it through a waterfall, because that would be more fun.
Well, we should
and
tell
easier to understand.
For viewers who aren't familiar with what we mean by waterfall, this is the term given to the financial, scheme. I don't mean that in a bad way, but the scheme used to figure out where the money comes in and who gets paid at the end. And there's a lot of different levels.
It's like a flow chart,
like
basically.
a flow chart. It's complicated. I remember when it was first described at City Council more than 10 years ago now, it was like, what are they talking about?
Although I should say, to be fair, the new one is a little bit less complex, like the new waterfall. If you have to have a waterfall, which we can argue whether you do have to have one. But yes, it's like who puts money in and at what level do you get money out?
Yeah, and so like the revenue going into the to the plan is, well, we could talk about the air rights that the city wants to sell here. When we talk about air rights, we mean building high, at Lansdowne Park with either condos or apartments or hotel, we don't know. So there'll be a sale from those for those rights. And, there's going to be, in terms of the retail that we see behind us here that's been built, that brings in money.
And the city's supposed to get a portion of the money brought in on the retail side, right? Like this whole thing where the city is kind of partners with OSEG, which is the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, to kind of develop this entire site, both the city side and sort of the private side, but also somehow share in the revenues. And it's that sharing in the revenues over 40 years that the waterfall is supposed to show how that works, and it's kind of complex.
And of course, it's hard to predict, and this is kind of what's at the core of this right now, is like it's hard to predict over 40 years the success of any financial endeavor, right?
Yeah.
Or it's hard to predict, you buy a house, you don't know what the mortgage rates are going to be in 5 years, right?
Let alone 40.
Yeah, and so I think we're going to talk a lot about the risks involved in the proposal for Lansdowne 2.0, but I think that's central to this. We don't know what's going to happen decades from now, let alone like 5 years from now, what the success of the park is going to be, and that's why we're in trouble now with Lansdowne 1.0, because we couldn't really see the daylight at the end about what the first redevelopment was going to bring or not bring to the city taxpayers.
Right. Okay. So let's just go back to those revenues. John, you mentioned air rights, for instance. So the ability of a third-party developer to come in and build towers on site. And they pay for that privilege.
That's right.
That can bring in, I think they're
about 40 million.
40 million is what the city hopes
for. If that is true, if they bring it.
Well, that's right.
It was lower than they expected the first time around, so we'll have to see.
Yes, and the market for condos or high rises seems to be softening. So whether that number is still valid, because let's remember these are estimates that we first heard in 2023. So 2 years ago, we have not had any updates published since then. There's also, you mentioned retail. The financial projections show that Lansdowne can make $1 billion in profits, not revenue, but profits for retail alone. And so that's obviously a significant amount, but it does beg the question, like, what is retail going to look like in 5 years from now, let alone 40 years from now, right?
You don't know when the next pandemic's going to hit, right? And we see what's happened.
And what do they mean by retail? Is it really, are there going to be stores where you buy blouses? Probably not, but there are lots of restaurants and bars. And is it going to be more of an entertainment type center? I don't know. For what it's worth, we should just say that EY did do an analysis of what revenues could come from a lot of things, including retail, and the Auditor General found that they were reasonable. Now, are they going to actually pan out? Who knows? Are there risks? Sure. But I don't think anyone said, like, this is completely unrealistic. So the thing is, no one really knows. And it is interesting. I get what you mean. Like, it's hard to see how retail and what retail means. But I think it's more that it's, when I think of retail, I think of shopping. But I think it's going to be more of an entertainment type district, and maybe some offices. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Lansdowne was always redeveloped as a sports and entertainment district for sure, and but we have had 10 years of experience with this site, right? And we're seeing that on game days it's very full, but during the rest of the week there's really not a lot of foot traffic. Some of the retail outlets, you wonder how they are surviving, quite frankly. I have to say, I should actually say, for those that don't know, and I think most
Who
people
does not know this? Come on.
most people know that I've been a fairly outspoken critic of Lansdowne. I think that the amount of money that we're spending and the reliability of the revenues means that this is actually a pretty bad deal for taxpayers. So I just want to put that on the table, that
Sure.
I am not a neutral, impartial observer
This
here.
is not an impartial panel. That is not how we market ourselves.
All of us have a feeling, even when we were reporters, covering City Hall, all of us had a feeling of what this place is like after the redevelopment. And so do many citizens of Ottawa who've come visit Lansdowne, whether you actually live in a neighborhood that abuts Lansdowne or you've come from all corners of the city. You've been here, and how does it really work for the average visitor to Lansdowne?
Yeah.
And I think we can all agree, like, there's some things that just don't feel like they work quite yet, that need to be improved. I mean, we can do a vibe check about Lansdowne Park, and we look around, the playground could be improved. I know the city has its eyes on improving the urban park part of it, hopefully. The canyon effect by the retail buildings has been a problem. The
Transit.
the actually being able to drive through, I got to tell you guys, I felt really guilty last week. I drove through the property going from Bank Street to Queen Elizabeth. I'm like, I feel so dirty right now. I've always hated how people could drive through the property. It's so dangerous. That's one of the bugaboos I've always had.
And transit, that it's not on public transit.
It's not on public transit.
Or rapid transit, I should say.
Right. That's a big problem, especially for game days. And so, with Lansdowne too, guys, it's an opportunity for the city to correct, to improve things on Lansdowne, but the financial part, that's the hardest thing to get our heads around, right?
Okay.
About the financial benefit for the taxpayer.
Yeah, so look, let's talk about some of those other issues, but let's just finish off this financing piece. And so what we know is we're expecting costs of somewhere around $500 million, maybe could be more. We are also expecting revenues to come in that would offset, that in theory would offset a lot of the debt. However, what I would do is question the reliability of those revenues. And I think that if we look at the experience of Lansdowne 1.0, where taxpayers were promised over the life of that agreement to get back about $100 million in profits, and of course we didn't get any.
Actually, in fact, within a few years of Lansdowne being open, we were told we're getting no money from that waterfall.
Yeah.
So of course there's a lot of skepticism, and I think that's right. And I think we should also talk a little bit, and I don't know if you're going to ask about this, how we pay for the idea that we use the property taxes that would not exist to pay for debt. This is what we heard the first time. I should say that John and I have been reporting on Lansdowne since 2010.
Okay.
When we first both started at City Hall, and my mind was blown. I had like a giant binder of docs. I'm like, what is happening? And I never bought the whole concept of revenue neutrality, and I don't buy it now. Now, they're not saying it's going to be revenue neutral now. They're saying it's going to cost us $5 million extra. But here's how they think that the theory of it, and that is, if you build a bunch of stuff at Lansdowne, you're going to have residences. You're going to have home properties. You're going to have commercial properties that are going to pay property taxes, and these units would never have existed before. And so we take the property taxes from these units and we apply them to the debt, and that means that it's basically, it pays for itself. And I would like to say that nowhere else in the city do we treat property taxes like this. It's not that it's not true. Of course it's true that, yes, there's going to be more property taxes, but we generally, it's a little windy. This is the thing about the...
Can makeup and hair come over here?
No problem. But, this is the issue is that property taxes
Yeah.
don't just go in a little vault that is attached to this one property. It goes in a big pot that's supposed to pay for a lot of stuff we need around the city. But somehow for Lansdowne, we can earmark those property taxes to pay for the debt. That's where the biggest part
Yeah.
of that $500 million is supposed to come from, property taxes. And what I'm saying is property taxes is public money. So it's not private money. So you can say that it's self-financing, but I think people need to be very, very clear about what we mean by that.
Okay, so let's have a discussion about that. Before we do, I just want to make one last point on the revenue side, and we've thrown around this number a couple of times that the city is saying this will only cost taxpayers $5 million a year, and I've contested that number is almost certainly not going to hold. But one thing that's absolutely certain through the city projections is that is an average over 40 years. Okay, so over 40 years, that's what on average taxpayers should expect to pay. What we've also seen is that most of the revenues that come are backloaded, so they don't come to the city until after 2050. So we are not going to see those revenues, the 2/3 of them, until after 2050. What that means is in the short term, in the first decade, probably the first 2 decades, taxpayers are paying more. They're paying more than that $5 million. And in fact, the amount that they will be paying, according to my calculation, is closer to $20 million. So what we're really saying is that current taxpayers will be paying $20 million for the next couple of decades, or certainly for the next decade, maybe the next 2 or even longer. They will be paying $20 million a year, with the hope that their kids or their grandkids might get some of that money back through a future city hall. So I think that the city's being mischaracterizing what's really going on here.
Aren't we supposed to be getting, and I don't know that this is going to happen, but aren't we supposed to start getting money from the waterfall? And I mean the city, like around 2030?
Well, we will, but it's a very small amount.
But it's still like $6 million or something, or like, I know it's not a lot of money. But would it not be enough to cover that? Some of our debts. I actually should say, and I know that you were probably going to say this, but I think the city is saying that we're going to borrow like $380 million, and that is going to cost $16 million a year.
Yes.
To service that debt. Yeah. And eventually we're going to get that money back from waterfall and tax uploads and things like that. But at the beginning, we might have to cover that ourselves.
Yeah.
And $5 million of that will not be covered, and that's because we went from 3 residential towers on the site to 2 residential towers. So that's what they're saying. I am intrigued by your $20 million thing. I have looked at it. I would like to study that some more, but I think it is safe to say that it's going to cost more than $5 million, probably.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, it speaks again to the risk and the unknowns of the project. Yeah. And it's hard to predict. I always maybe I I'm a glass half empty kind of guy.
I think I was very positive.
Well, maybe a can half empty.
It's already not half empty yet. But I mean, I'm always I'm financially I'm not risky. So when I see a report like this that's talking about lots of millions, $500 million, and then seeing the AG's report saying, you know what, the city is maybe underestimating on some of these figures. Everything is that they did a robust study, but they're underestimating. I'm like, I kind of side with the AG on this and worry about what those final numbers are going to be in decades from now.
Yeah, okay. So that's a great point, because the Lansdowne projections are based on a financial model, and all models are wrong. They're wrong. No, they are. They're wrong
to some degree.
They're wrong by design, right? They are just a best estimate as to what the future will look like. Like they hope to be as accurate as possible, but they know that they can never get it perfect. And so, to your point, John, the question is that how close are we to how much confidence do we have in these projections? And I think what we're saying is there's actually very little confidence in these projections, because there's just too many unknowns.
So many, yeah.
Yeah, and so then the question becomes, and to your point, Joanne, about we're taking out this debt, and the city is saying that is going to cost us $16 million a year in debt payments. That's just a calculation, easy to do. So they say,
in principal and interest, basically servicing the debt over 4
like
years.
your mortgage payment, right? If you have a very nice house.
It's this.
But okay, so $16 million a year, and what the city is saying is that we, the city, are going to put aside $16 million to pay for this. So actually the city, by its own calculation, is assuming that we're not even going to, like, is operating on the basis that even if we get zero from this partnership, we will be taxpayers will be able to manage it. So,
but I think they're also assuming, or at least arguing, I should say, that they're going to put it aside so that we have the money, but that later we're going to get getting it back. I mean, they are putting that forward. I know that there's a lot of skepticism around that, but that is their argument. It's not that we are going to always pay for that,
okay,
which would be maybe more honest.
Okay,
I think.
So let's pull this out of the weeds for a sec here.
Yeah.
And John, to your point that there's a lot of risk here, and so then the question is, we're just taking a leap of faith here. It's fair to say that we could be taking a leap of faith here. So the question is, like, why are we doing it? Like, what is this all about, and is it worth taking that leap of faith?
Well, I argue, this is what it was about in my mind when Lansdowne 1.0 was being talked about. It's about bringing CFL football. It was about bringing CFL football back to Ottawa, back to Lansdowne Park. And I think that's a linchpin out of everything that follows, including Lansdowne 2.0. So if I'm a counselor right now and you consider everything we're talking about here, about the huge financial risks, about the unknowns decades from now, 5 years from now, it's an unknown, how do I vote? How do I support this financially? And maybe we just call it what it is. A lot of counselors perhaps are thinking, you know what? This is a good vibe for the city. This is the cost of having a CFL team in these conditions in Ottawa. Ottawa is a tough entertainment market for anything, whether it be sports or arts and entertainment, right? And so maybe this is the cost of having Lansdowne Park and a CFL team, notwithstanding everything we're just talking about in terms of the finances, right?
That's the problem, though, because that's never the argument. The argument is like, oh, this makes good financial sense, and it's not about finances. It's about city building to some people. Other people who are not interested in sports saying, why should we fund this? I would like to say that every CFL stadium in this country is owned by their municipality. It has public money, all of them. So if we want to have CFL football, and we can talk about NHL hockey in a couple of years, markets this size have public money in them. Maybe you don't believe in that. That's fine. But I'm just saying that's the reality. So why are we not having a discussion that is honest, that's saying, and I wrote this the first time around for Lansdowne, and this is a public asset. Do we believe in this public asset? What do we think the role of this public asset is? So let us invest in it properly, make some money where we can, but the idea that it's all going to pay for itself is foolish and not true. And it ends up this is why we have a crappy system in the first place, right? Because it was supposed to be revenue neutral. So the commercial got way bigger than a lot of people wanted. We didn't replace the north side stands. We didn't replace the arena at the time because we didn't want to spend more money then. It's way more expensive now, of course, because this is a city of half-assedness, right? Where we want to do stuff, but not too good because we want to look fiscally responsible. But as we see here, 13 years later, that was not responsible. So do it properly, but be honest about what you're doing. And the whole waterfall system, it's a very complex financial system. And is that really the way the city should be doing things? Or should we have more straightforward, simple arrangements? I'm not saying don't partner with the private sector, but it is a very intricate partnership that I don't know how well it's working.
I agree with you, and I wonder, and we talked about this off camera, but whether there's an opportunity to rethink the arrangement with OSEG altogether, and have OSEG more of a tenant-landlord arrangement with the city in terms of using the stadium. It's a city asset. The city owns the retail buildings. So I mean, there could be a landlord-tenant arrangement, and I wonder if that's something that's been talked about behind the scenes at City Hall with OSEG, and I'd like to see what that would look like as well.
Well, you've got to think that it has been discussed. Who knows what conclusions they're coming to, but I actually think what Lansdowne 2.0 is all about is actually just a business model that has not worked over the last decade. I mean, the two of you talked about football and what parts of the stadium we chose to repair. That was 10 years ago. And I think those arguments were very real and very valid 10 years ago. Do we want a CFL team in Ottawa? And this is the price to do it. The fact of the matter is we have a CFL team here now, right? Are the CFL team going to pack up and go? Well, you know what? They've got an agreement to stay in Ottawa until 2032, but all bets are off after that, regardless of what we do with Lansdowne 2.0. So I think that this idea that whether football is an important part of the city is a very valid question, and obviously a lot of people think it is. But that was a Lansdowne.
But not enough. We had the second lowest attendance, the Red Blacks, last year of anyone in the CFL.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just throw that in.
Performance matters, apparently, right?
Well, I mean,
Well-
that's one of the risks of when you're talking about professional sports and involving a government, the local government. You just kind of ride the wave of what your team is like that year, and maybe they're going to be a contender next year.
I would
We don't
also
know.
like to say that
With
the
bums and
lowest,
seats.
but the lowest attendance, we're the second lowest. The lowest attendance was in Toronto, and they won the Grey Cup. So it's not always exactly about performance, right? It's about where the trends are going. So it talks more to the risk about what we're doing here.
Yeah. Well, look, and so Lansdowne 2.0 is saying we need to redo that north stand. So if you remember in Lansdowne 1.0, we put in this great lawn behind us. We did a lot of we did the south stands. So we knocked
We
them
had
down.
to because they were unsafe and
Yeah.
they were condemned.
Yeah, we put in all the retail. We did this urban park out back. And so that has a lot of people would say, well, look, you know what we did was great, and it's frankly good enough for the situation we're in. So that's the question: is going forward, like what we have, is it good enough, or do we actually need to go ahead with this 2.0 and spend this other $500 million?
Well, what about the arena? That's something we haven't talked about. I still call it the Civic Center because I'm about that era. But you know, it is pretty outdated. If we don't replace it, it needs not just like maintenance, but like some kind of significant renovation. We were talking before the show. We're not sure that has really been done, a study of what it would take. Like, would it cost only $200 million to replace what's there now? John?
Well, I know, like, I use the gym that's in the building, and every time it rains, they have to put buckets down on the floor to catch the rainfall, the leaking that's happening from the roof. Maybe we all have, but gone to hockey games or other events in the arena, and it needs something.
A lot.
It needs
a
something,
lot.
and it's probably outdated. And I know
There's some concrete falling and stuff like that.
Yeah, and OSEG has talked about this, about how are we supposed to lure major events to Lansdowne when we have a facility like this. Like, if you're bringing in international federations to look at your sports facilities, they're going to walk in and say, we can't come here. Some
Well,
have.
we had the Ottawa Junior Championships here just recently.
They did come.
Hockey.
Yeah.
With the existing arena. But again, I come back to, we knew all this 10 years ago, right? So why is it that 10 years ago
Because of money.
Oh.
Because they decided that to make it revenue neutral, which it was not, they couldn't do that part. I go back to my capital city of half-assedness. Like, this is why we don't go in for the full thing, right? It's like, well, we can do it, but not too well. Like, or LRT is another example. We're going to have LRT, but we're not going to spend the amount of money we need to do it really well. And now we're paying for it in LRT, and now we're paying for it at Lansdowne.
I'm going to increase my parking at the city garage.
What is happening?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm over. So the great thing
I
about
will keep arguing with Neil
okay.
about what is happening here.
Yeah, look, I've got 0.
Okay, John.
All right.
Well, John it extends his parking. Joanna,
Yes.
let's come back to that issue about what property tax uplift. Okay,
Yeah.
so the idea is we're going to build a couple of towers on site, and the property tax that comes from those buildings will be used to pay the debt on Lansdowne. Now, I think you were making the point that aren't property taxes supposed to pay for city services?
Yes.
So the question is, if we put up these towers and we use the property taxes to pay for Lansdowne debt, who's paying for the services those people are?
This is actually the exact argument they had for Lansdowne 1. And I think in Lansdowne 1, what they said, if I remember correctly, the deputy treasurer said about 75% of the taxes from here went to debt, and the other 25% covered, other stuff, right? But I'm just saying that we don't treat any other brand new buildings this way. And property tax that comes in is public money. You want to say we're going to spend that public money on debt refinancing or on debt payment? Fine, we can put it towards that. But let's not pretend that's revenue neutral, because that's the way the entire city works all the time. So you can't just pretend that it's earmarked for this site, because that's not how the city works. And I should also say, Ottawa is not the only place to use this argument. It's used in Edmonton. It's used everywhere where, frankly, sports facilities are trying to get public money, and they're saying, look, this is going to be good for the city because you're going to have these property taxes you didn't have before. Again, we are going to have property taxes we didn't have before, but I'm just saying that let's not pretend that's somehow different
Yeah.
than property taxes from any building, a shopping mall, a new subdivision, right? Like that's the way it works.
And I actually don't think it's quite as unambiguously clear as people might think, right? So sure, you put up new towers and you'll get property tax revenue off that. The question is, would the developer have used that capital and built towers elsewhere, right? And would we have got the property tax off different towers? So again, it is very complicated. I agree that this idea of earmarking, something the city does not do, and to pretend that we're doing it here is...
I've never bought that argument.
Yeah.
I don't buy from Ottawa or any other city. I know people argued with me about it, but I just, again, you can argue for the reasons that John said about why we should have this development, but I think people need to be more honest and forthright about what it's going to cost, what we're going to spend, and why we're doing it. And not just pretend that this is a very reasonable business deal, which it is very unusual.
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say, just generally, do you think the average citizen of Ottawa cares about revenue neutrality of the Lansdowne deal? Honestly, do you think, I wonder, we're talking about the financial stuff, we're talking about the area, we're talking about all the revenue expenses, the average Ottawa citizen.
But if you said, we did Lansdowne 13 years ago, and now we're going to spend another $500 million on it, maybe we're going to get that money back, maybe not.
Yeah.
What do you think they'd say about that? They'd be like, what? I mean, it depends. How much do you like football?
Well, how much do you use it? How
Are
much
you
do
one of the
enjoy
18,000 people who go to the game?
What kind of vibe does Lansdowne give people? And this is I think one of
Yoga
the
on the
central
Great Lawn
questions,
is
too.
pretty fun.
Actually, that's a really important point. So what sort of vibe does Lansdowne give people? And John, did you get your parking taken care of?
No, I couldn't renew it. It's okay.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
Neil will cover your
Yeah,
ticket.
that's right.
A better Ottawa will cover your parking
expense
spot.
account here. Yeah.
So this idea of vibe, I think a lot of people thought think that what we did in 2014 around there, like a decade, 12, 13 years ago, is actually really good, a really good outcome. People come here for game day. They say this is a fantastic experience. And, they might come a couple of times a year and maybe take advantage of the restaurants. And on game days or major events like the Farmers Market or 613 Flea, there's always a lot of people. It's a lot of fun. It does have that great vibe.
In the evenings, there's some of the restaurants are super full.
Yeah, if you look at the fan blogs for the CFL too, they when they're ranking CFL stadiums around the league, I mean, Ottawa ranks in the middle or in the upper tier. So people enjoy coming here for the events, no doubt about it. And so, what does the average citizen think that should? What should be done to improve the situation?
Well,
here?
we're right. And does it require $500 million minus whatever we happen to get back, right? And that's where, if you remember, well, maybe you don't, but in 2023, the city commissioned, or maybe it was OSEG, the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group, one of the two commissioned some polling on what do residents think of Lansdowne 2.0. And they managed to get a result that said the majority of citizens approve of it. But it was essentially asking the question, if it came for free, would you like an upgraded Lansdowne 2.0?
No brainer,
I would like
right?
anything that came for free, yeah. Well, are we going to talk a little bit about OSEG and the city's argument on what happens if we do nothing, right? Because this is the other big argument at council of why they need to make this investment.
Yeah, great. So take it away.
You can.
Well,
let's hear from
okay.
you.
So
I know you have a lot of feelings about this and thoughts.
So,
not just feelings.
You're right that one of the arguments that is sort of taking center stage right now is what is the cost of doing nothing? The city will say it's about $8.5 million a year, and what they've done is they've looked at the last 10 years and said, okay, how much have partners had to put in, and let's divide it by the number of years, and then they took out the 2 pandemic years. So that's how they came up with this number of 8.5. Well, that's kind of ridiculous because at the startup, there were startup costs that got factored into those cash injections that partners need to make. Obviously, we won't have those startup costs going forward. There's also the financial projections that the city and OSEG have put forward show an improving financial situation. So they
still lost money last year.
They did, but they say within about 5 years or so, we will be. This is what they claim.
That's what they say every year. Every year that they lost money, within 5 years, they'll be making money.
Fine.
Right,
It'll
but
be okay.
But here's the question: the cost of doing nothing. Let's just say that the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group said, you know what, this partnership is no longer working.
And we should say, to be fair to them, and I've always said, I don't think they ever, the partners ever came into the partnership with the city to make money on development, because there are many, many, many easier ways, much, much easier ways to make money for developers than this crazy plan. But they have put in, OSEG partners have put in more than $100 million to shore up the shortfalls at Lansdowne than they ever planned to. And that's not really sustainable. And so I think, so when you go to say, what if we do nothing, one of the worries is, look, if there's not more people coming here, if we don't build these towers so that more people live here, if we don't have more visitors, we're going to probably leave. Like, we're going to have to, OSEG will exit this partnership, and then what does the city do? And that's one of the scenarios that the city puts out there. That will, you know.
But and the point is that we've never really explored that, what we would do in that context, right? And I think that's part of the shortfall of this proposal, is that we've never actually had an honest discussion about what could we do with this site if it was not, like, if we were thinking differently than we were currently thinking. So if OSEG made the decision that they had to leave the partnership and that the city was in 100% control of the site, would they run the site exactly the way it's being run right now? Would
you keep the football stadium? Would you...
could you find another buyer for the team?
Would you move the arena somewhere else along LRT? I mean, like, you're right. It's like... it's a blank canvas all of a sudden. Not quite, because we've got these beautiful stores here now, but and the Aberdeen Pavilion. Like, we haven't really, I don't know if we've maximized the Aberdeen Pavilion in any way.
Or the
horticulture building. You know, they've got events in there, but you're right. I think...
And a new HVAC system, I think.
Yeah, and I think the urban park, for any families who come to Lansdowne Park, I know for me, having, a young son, when we come here, the playground leaves more to be desired, I think, the playground area. And so... I think back, guys, to the design competition. Remember the design competition that happened for the urban park?
Oh, yeah.
And all the we were pretty pumped up about the designs. And the bridge coming across, bringing the canal into the property, which, jurisdictional nightmares with federal
Parks
government
Canada,
crowns.
Like, no, you can't break the canal wall, all the things,
And so to your question, Neil, about, like, what would we do otherwise, that's a good question, and I don't know how long it would take for us to actually get an answer. Probably many years to figure out what the city wants.
And to be fair, like, cities don't run commercial venues, but they'd have to, like, it would be kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And to be also to say, like, I don't think people want to see the private partners in OSEG lose their shirts and walk away, because that's bad feeling, right? Like, I didn't agree with the original plan, because when people said, where will these people come from on like non-game days, I also thought, where? I don't get it, and that's ended up what happened. But I think people came in with it with good faith, and I think people feel really badly at how much these private partners, not everyone, they're developers. Nobody seems to like developers. But they lost a lot of money at Lansdowne, but that doesn't mean that is the reason to put more, like, good money after bad.
Right. Yeah, okay, that's point well taken. Just imagine the roles were reversed. Let's say that it was a city that was losing money hand over fist every year. Would we be going back to the private developer and saying, we need to renegotiate this deal because it's no longer working for us? Of course not. We would just take the hit. So that was the deal that OSEG signed up for. They said, we're so confident of our projections and of our business model that we will eat all the losses. We will eat all the capital that needs to go into it. That was the deal they made. So
they've learned a few things.
Yes.
For example, we were talking about this earlier. Any project cost overruns for the arena and the stands will be the city's, which makes sense because it's our asset. But in Lansdowne 1.0, it was OSEG. So there's, a lot more risks for the city.
Although on that note, there was a repair done to that to the Civic Center.
Yeah.
The roof was redone. That was $25 million. Mm-hmm. Who ended up paying for that? The city.
Well, you do own it, though.
Yes, but the agreement was that any maintenance and any upgrades and any upkeep would be done by OSEG.
Yeah, there was a bit of dispute, I remember, between whether, like, should have been discovered ahead of time before the partnership was struck.
Yeah.
These are city assets. Man, I don't know. Like, this, it's interesting. The CFL team and the 67s, for that matter, the hockey team, they've been around for, give or take, many years, on or off, certainly with the football team. And I think it's become a very important part of the city, certainly about the redevelopment plans.
Have the teams or the idea of the teams?
Well,
been,
I think
Yeah.
they're both.
Yeah.
Both. And I think when for people who I didn't think would be interested in professional football in Ottawa, who I've talked to, were pretty pumped when the CFL was returning to Ottawa. And if you think about it just high level, just again in a vibe perspective, it's crazy that the nation's capital wouldn't have a CFL team.
I wrote I was writing a column, the city column for the Ottawa Citizen at the time, and on the first day I wrote it from my seat in the North Stands. And it was really fun. It was a very exciting day.
Okay.
It's fun when things are happening.
Yeah.
And what is the city's responsibility to make sure there are things to do, that this is a city people want to come to, because there are sports, there's arts, there's all kinds of things, right?
Okay, but I just want to talk about sports teams for a minute.
Yeah, women's hockey, we have not talked about them.
Well, that's right. But before we do, those North Stands that we're talking about tearing down and rebuilding, it's important for people to realize that those stands are used for the Red Blacks games. A couple of special events, like I think maybe in 2024 we had international rugby here in Ottawa, but that's it. So
What
those
about soccer? They're
Big-
not
big
used for
concerts
athletics?
too, I think, no?
Well, big concerts, but when was the last one? I think it was Chris de Burgh. I'm going to answer my own question.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I just remember AC/DC. I was here for Guns N' Roses.
Guns
I
N'
think.
Roses, yeah. But
God.
the point is, these events happen a dozen times a year. So are we really talking about tearing down those North Stands, which
are covered.
which
I
are
love the cover.
covered
I love the cover.
for using them a dozen times a year, with the possibility that the major client, the football team, could possibly leave, as unfortunate as that would be.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the cover. So the plan doesn't have a covering over the new Northside stands, right? And we talked about the towers that might go up here at Lansdowne. I can see why
40 stories each.
40 stories. I can see why having a roof over the stands would impact possibly the viewing area for people who have some of the units facing the stands. When they didn't put a cover on the stands in the plan, I didn't really care so much, because I know a lot of stadiums are open air, very open air, of course, but without roof. But then I think of myself as John Willing, the spectator, and if I bought tickets, I'm like, I probably want to get tickets under the roof.
I love the roof of the North
Especially when it's
Stand.
raining in November, right?
Yes.
And so, and God knows what, or like a day like today, if there was a game like at night and it's like 40-degree humidex, it's nice to have some shade.
Yeah.
And so I now respect the idea of like maybe wanting a roof, and I'm now I'm leaning towards maybe the cities in OSEC should think about somehow getting some covering over the north side stands.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Probably not. Well, how
How
much
will
more,
it be
right?
revenue neutral if we put this? We're making all the same mistakes.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about women's professional hockey now, because I think that is one of the sleeper issues here. When this proposal, remember this proposal first came forward in 2023, I think, or 2020, well, like 2020.
2022, I think they agreed on the concept that let's have one, and then more details came out.
That's right, and that was right when women's hockey was getting underway. So, Joanne, do you want to talk about what has been the experience with hockey?
It has been a huge success, which I am very thrilled to hear. Sold out all the time. I would say arguably does better than the 67s right now. But it's new, right? You don't know if that's just going to be...
it's been a couple of years of those sort of numbers.
But that's still newish, right?
Yeah.
Compared to the 67s.
But let's just talk about the numbers.
But it is. They sell out all the time.
Yeah, and the Kern Arena holds... I'm thinking it's about 9,000.
It's in the 10 range.
Okay.
And so the question is like, why would we eliminate 5,000 seats?
And just to be clear on that, so what the proposal is that we're going to knock down that existing arena of about 10,000 seats, and we're going to put up a new event center, which would be closer to 5,000 seats, and move it onto this lawn behind us, or half of this lawn behind us. So. I've heard a lot from the Charge fans, the women's hockey team, that they are really outraged about this because, as you say, Joanne, they're often selling out games. I think their average attendance is 7,000 spectators per game, so that's well over the limit of the future stadium. And so what do we say to Charge fans?
I would go back to our conversation about it's hard to predict sports franchises. I mean, here's a great example we have in our own backyard, and it's the Ottawa Baseball Stadium, right on Coventry Road. It was built for AAA baseball.
Yeah.
It's a 10,000 seat stadium, 1,000-seat baseball stadium. Wow. And we know what happened. We were running inter-county baseball. For those of you who know baseball, inter-county baseball is very low tier.
I'm always surprised you're not playing for that team, John.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll try out next year. And so now the discussion over the past, quite frankly, about 10 years is about how can we take seats out of that stadium and make it more fan-friendly. So I think what they're trying to do with the arena, I don't want to
Another city-owned boondoggle.
So if you're going to try to right-size an arena that's not an NHL arena, and I think like the Charge can maybe look to the Sens and maybe use some of that facility for their big sellout games. But maybe for the 67s.
Like the playoffs or something?
And also one other thing, the city of Ottawa has always been looking for a mid-sized concert venue. And they're going to get it kind of with the Live Nation venue that's been built or being built on Rio Street.
On the old
but they've been always trying to find that mid-range concert venue, and this would fit that market as well. And so it's not just about the sports, but I think it's about an entertainment facility that could fill a void that's been missing in Ottawa for some time now.
Okay, I want to turn to risks. And entertainment district, we know that the Senators are trying to build their own sports and entertainment district in Le Breton, which is like 5 kilometers from here. So what that is a topic that has not come up in these Lansdowne discussions. What would be the impact of a new Senators sports and entertainment district at Le Breton on Lansdowne? What do you think?
I actually think exactly it, and I think that if I were Capital Sports, I would be concerned about what's happening at Lansdowne because, again, as I mentioned earlier, you can say that we should not put public money into professional sports, and that is a completely valid argument, and I have a lot of sympathy for that. But the fact is there is no market the size of Ottawa where public money has not gone into an NHL arena to keep it. So do we want the arena or do we want the arena, and what are we willing to pay for that? And if I were Capital Sports, I'd be looking at Lansdowne and thinking, wow, that $500 million should be coming to us, right? Because, the NHL team's not going anywhere, right? Yeah. It's like CFL. I mean, you can say, we quibble about sports, but the Sens have done very well, actually, recently in Canada, so you would expect that in downtown. Also, it's also opportunity cost with entertainment dollars for people in Ottawa. There's only so many sports fans going to who can go to so many things, right? Like, when the tickets become more expensive, because there's going to be a surcharge on tickets to pay for both CFL and hockey tickets here. You're thinking, okay, well, should I go to an NHL game? Like, I think there's a lot of risk there. And also, but on the other hand, I say, if we say yes, we're going to actually put a bunch of money to deal with CFL here and hockey here at Lansdowne, how do you then say to the NHL, but not for you? Yeah. A franchise that arguably has a much bigger economic impact on the city and also bigger vibes, to use a word that John likes to use, like way bigger vibes, right? Yeah. So complicated, as is everything, right? And I always go back to this argument. One of my main issues with the city is we try to make it seem like it's a pat project when in fact it's very complex.
Yeah. Okay. Another risk, and John, you experienced this firsthand yourself, is transportation. Getting to the site. So I've heard.
I'm the only one finishing my drink, I would also like to say. Although half of it was spilled on the ground.
Yeah, wait a second.
I've heard OSEG describe transportation as the Achilles heel of Lansdowne.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I mean, is that like we haven't talked about
it's not really fixable.
Yeah, well, and it's not part of the project proposal either, as far as I've seen. There's no transportation plan that goes along with it. So we talk about maybe having towers on site will bring more people. It will make the site more viable because there's more people on site, so they're using it. I'm not actually quite convinced about that, but if we're not able to solve the transportation issue, John, I mean, are we just dreaming that this is going to become financially more positive?
Yeah, and it is one of those things where if we were going to take up Lansdowne, the sports facilities, and put it somewhere else, would we put it in this location? Probably not.
That was an argument in 2010.
Yeah.
I'm like, why are we not building this at Bayview Yards?
Bayview, I mean, Herdman, we could talk about all the LRT hubs.
But here we are.
But so there's been conversations, I know, in the past couple of years about making bus-only lanes on Bank Street during game days, or how do we take advantage of the buses that we do have to effectively move people up and down from the LRT stations to the stadium. But it's always going to be the Achilles heel. Yeah. Transportation.
And it's only going to be on game day. Like, what about the rest of the time? That's the problem, getting here and out, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of parking here. People don't realize, but if you don't want... I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure one of you will know.
It's going to be about the water taxis on the canal.
Yeah.
I
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. The towers, are they going to have parking? Are they going to have unit parking? Because I'm very confused.
John, can I answer that?
Yeah, I was going to go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
So my understanding is, I think the plan said 770 units, right?
Right. And two buildings.
Over 2 buildings. And I think there might have been an amendment to even say that if they wanted to shoehorn more units in, they could. But there is a plan to have parking that goes along with that. But there's only 140 spots. And that's the other interesting thing, is that this 140 spots is going to cost about $19 million to build. And they haven't even included that in the project cost. And that's a whole other issue that we can get into. I'm sure I've covered it in my
and
writings.
I think the city says they're going to rent those slots out or whatever. But, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Like you want to live here. You want people to live here, but the transit's not great, but they're not going to have a parking spot. So...
Well, you've got to
Have to be
solve the
interesting.
Bank Street transit problem. Because
No problem.
It's
Done and done.
Well, that's right. But you mentioned it's a problem on game day, but it's also a problem like all the time, right? And particularly, you know, on a Saturday, a Sunday.
I would
it is
say on
just-
game day it's less of a problem because the city throws all of their resources on it, but in other events or days not as much, right?
Okay.
140 new parking spots for over 700 units.
Is that really the number?
If you live near
Wow.
the Lansdowne, like, look for your streets to be filled with parking. And I know it's pretty busy already on the weekends, you know, the neighboring community streets. And so where are people going to park? I think sometimes it's the wishful thinking, you know, that we want to get more people out of their cars and using public transportation.
yeah, but you got to give them the public transportation to
And
use,
so I
right?
think that's probably the thinking
Like-
here. We're trying to shift everyone to a sustainable mode of transportation, but let's be
It can't
honest.
just be magical thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can't be 600 people, yeah. 600
Okay, we're
units.
running out of time here. This is
Oh
much
my
longer
God.
than we've normally gone.
Oh,
Well, it's so fun. We're outside
Yeah.
having a great
having
time.
drinks, talking Lansdowne.
I know. We'll be here till like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
No.
So what I'd like to end on is your predictions, your thoughts on what's going to happen. So we're going to a council vote in October. Anyone want to take a guess as to where they think it's going to go?
I would not want to guess, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than Lansdowne 1 was, which was, you know, only a few outliers. I think they will eke it through, but I'm not confident of that, to be honest. I think it's going to be pretty contentious.
Seagulls have a vote. If the Seagulls had a vote, it would probably be voted down. But
yeah,
I think
they did not. They clearly did not agree with you, Joanne.
Fair,
But,
completely fair.
I'm going with, I think, the vibe and the interest by, I think, the majority of council to keep Lansdowne going with the CFL team and trying the city's best to make it work will carry the day at council, and I think it will pass. But I'm also curious to see what kind of updated figures are going to come to council before the vote, because I know it's only been months, but surely the numbers have changed.
And
by now.
also, too, like, I just want to add, like, if the decision was wrong and the waterfall revenue does not materialize, which we won't know, all of these people will be long gone, right? And they don't have to wear that decision.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? My prediction is that I think there's a reasonable chance that this doesn't even make it to council in
Really?
October. Yeah, I think that the complexity of the finances could collapse this whole deal. Like, I just think that the costs are undoubtedly rising much higher than anyone expected. When you think about tariffs, you think about construction cost escalations. So I think that the city has been determined to shoehorn this into the $419 million budget. Like they haven't. In fact, they could have taken the Auditor General's revised estimate of 493 and said, okay, you know what, we'll go with the Auditor General.
Just be conservative, just half a
give
billion.
themselves more
yeah.
wiggle room. But they were so determined to get this into 419, which, by the way, reminds me a lot of LRT, right? 2.1.
100%.
Oh, yeah. That
So-
worked out well.
Yeah, exactly. So we're making the same mistake all over again to say we got the budget and we're going to figure out how to make it work. But I think that there's the cost pressures and then also just the revenue. The revenue numbers are looking increasingly difficult. And who knows what sort of pressure councillors feel that they're under. I see more of them being vocal about this issue, responding to what their constituents are saying. So I think there's a reasonable chance that the finances just don't work, coupled with the fact that these towers, the condo market is softening. And so whether there is a developer that is prepared to go ahead and build these condo towers anytime in the near future is a moot question.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see when the proposals come in,
Yeah.
if they're what the report will be like in the fall. We're expecting it in October, I believe, and it should have all of these details of because the city's been putting stuff out to tender, expressions of interest, how to build an event center, tenders to build the towers. So over the next few months, we will see how the market is responding to that, and I will be very interested to see who's interested and in what exactly.
Should we bet a rattler on it? Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I want
see
real
what
wine
happens.
next time.
Okay, well,
All right.
listen, that has been our insights into Lansdowne. So thanks very
Cheers
much.
to both of you.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Yeah, cheers.
Great. Cheers.
Good discussion, and thanks very much for being here. I'd like to thank, of course, Rogers TV
All right.
for filming this. It's been a pleasure to be out at Lansdowne with Rogers. And, of course, I'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us today. Council is slowing down to take their summer break. Well due. Which means that we are also taking a bit of a summer break.
Yay!
We don't know how long that'll be, but as soon as city business starts to pick up again, so will we. So we will look forward to rejoining you. We hope you all have a very restful summer. Thank you.